and it's something that started or something that is streaming on a um, streaming service, and basically it's a show for children that basically says a different side of the Luciferian story. And so we'll go ahead and play it, and we just want to share what we saw and just kind of some biblical points to keep in mind when you're thinking about whether or not this is something that you or your family should, consider as a form of entertainment, and maybe why it's something you should be, very be warned about.
Yeah. So the question here is, what's your thoughts on the new Hazbin Hotel show on Amazon? So this is something being marketed to families everywhere now, and seemingly for children, but might want to think twice about that.
Yeah. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to play it, and then we will pause it at times and react to talk about this is biblically accurate or this isn't, and talk about some of the really subtle times nuances here that just take it from being, oh, this is cool, it's accurate, to just, wow, this is something we got to watch out for. So if our producer's ready, let's go ahead and let's start the we're going to be reacting to like the first 2 minutes of the show. This is available on YouTube, so we're just going to play it, watch it, react to it. And are we able to get the audio on it?
Yeah, I don't hear the audio.
So there's an audio that goes through and it's describing heaven, and it actually starts off with a remarkably accurate description of heaven, where it describes, you see there's sort of like the holy mountain. You see, it talks about beings of light. And so far, all this is fairly accurate. I was like, oh, wow, this is the most accurate description I've seen of heaven.
And we'll also note the music that's playing here is very like Disneyland and whimsical and feels all happy and positive. And so it kind of, it draws you in as something enticing and beautiful potentially.
Yeah, and the fact that it's so animated in such a way that's so child-centered, it's definitely targeting that audience, which is a little bit scary. But again, we'll go back and see if we can get the audio.
It was ruled by beings of pure light, angels that worshipped good and shielded all from...
I want to say this is kind of... this is actually an ongoing meme where people do lots of these memes of quote unquote biblically accurate angels. And so you see here angels with many eyes and wheels within wheels all around them. And we see these, for example, described in Ezekiel. Now, there's some people almost joke like all angels in the Bible look like this. And the reality is only some of the cherubim that Ezekiel saw look like that. And it's not necessarily saying this is like literally what they look like. It could be very metaphorical language suggesting that these are creatures who have real good knowledge. They see almost all that's going on. So it is blown a little bit out of proportion, but at the same time, those who like the memes would probably relate to what they're seeing here.
Evil. Lucifer was one of these angels. He was a dreamer with fantastical ideas for all of creation, but he was seen as a troublemaker by the elders of heaven, for they felt his way of thinking was dangerous to the order of their world. So he watched as the angels...
Pause it here first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it accurate that Lucifer first was among these heavenly beings?
Yeah. I mean, just the way they portray Lucifer as a dreamer, and like he's got a top hat, like he's fun, he's like a circus leader. The way that they portray him is like something happy, something good, and somebody misunderstood, and just really trying to portray him in a very different light.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if they go for like the Jacobin hat, maybe, or something. There's definitely some symbolism there. Or is it sort of like the Joker hat, like for like when you're playing cards, the Joker there? Who knows? Definitely they're going for symbolism there. But then, yeah, they're talking about how he caused trouble in heaven, and he's like, he just meant for the best, but poor him, heaven didn't like what he was doing. Again, there's like some truth there, right? Maybe do you have a verse you want to talk about where he was trafficking ideas in heaven? That was going on. That was why he gets kicked out.
Yeah, and that's in Ezekiel chapter 28, I believe, because of the your traffic, you know, basically how Satan did have different ideas, and that's true. He did, but it doesn't mean that his ideas were good. Um, his ideas were dangerous. And if you look, I mean, I can't help but always go back to, Isaiah chapter 14, where it talks about the fall of Lucifer, and starting verse 12 says, "How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you're cut down to the ground." And in verse 13 says, "For you've said in your heart," it's not that he had fantastic ideas. He was trying to do something fun and happy for everybody. It says, because he said in his heart, "I will ascend to heaven. I will exalt my throat above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mountain of the congregation. I on the farthest sides of the north." He wanted the highest position. This is pride. This is somebody who's like the extreme narcissist. And it says, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." And so that is the character of Satan, not this, oh, he just wants to have dreaming ideas and that sort of thing. This is a very different
He
portrayal
wasn't
of Lucifer.
innocent. He wasn't innocent. He was
Yeah.
intentionally undermining what is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
for his own benefit. And then he's couching it in terms of maybe, oh, it's for the benefit of the angels. And we are, we angels, maybe we deserve better and we're being mistreated by God. God is the selfish one. And this is probably going to be a theme we want to touch back on is what is it like to have Satan as your enemy? And there's going to be a lot of analogies to someone who's stuck in an abusive relationship with a narcissist or a sociopath who then is projecting everything onto the other person. And what are you going to do to defend yourself in that sort of situation where reality around you is just being warped so much by the imagination almost of that narcissist or sociopath?
Mm-hmm.
So let's
in those situations, as you probably know, that person is always the victim. They're, even while they've got the power and they're abusing somebody else, they're claiming that they're the victim in every part of it, which is exactly what we see happening here. That, oh, Satan is just the victim of what's going on in heaven, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah. So let's continue the video.
In their ways, from the dust of earth, they created Adam and Lilith, equals as the first of mankind.
It's interesting that they don't really talk about God, but just these spiritual beings. I missed it the first time around, but it's just talking about these creatures of light, and the creatures of light do the creation, and the creatures of light have a problem with Satan. But it's interesting that they're not saying that there's a specific God who's over the heavenly creatures. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's also interesting. They start with Adam, which is the biblical, first created man from the dust, just like it's saying, but it says Lilith as opposed to Eve, which is very interesting because there is it was a Judaic story about a girl named Lilith who falls in love with Lucifer. There's there is some backstory to that, which is very, very interesting.
And I think it was sort of supposed to be Adam's first wife. And what they say is there's two creations. There was Genesis 1, and then there's Genesis 2. And Eve shows up in Genesis 2, but Lilith was Genesis 1, they say.
But yet the story that we're going to see play out here has symbolism and elements of Adam and Eve, but it's Adam and Lilith. I also thought it was interesting that they just mentioned how they were created equal, that these two beings were created to be equal, which is actually a biblical concept. Men and women were created to be equal. So that piece is true, but
that doesn't mean the same, but yeah. Equal.
Yeah. But where they go with this now, we'll see.
Yeah. And by the way, there is an article on BibleAsk.org about who was Lilith, so you could go research and read about that for more detail if you're interested in about Lilith.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's keep going.
Despite this, Adam demanded control, and Lilith refused to submit to his will. She fled the garden.
Well, that's interesting right there. They have it so that Lilith is immediately the victim of a power-hungry Adam, which we don't see that in the Bible until God says, okay, now that sin has entered the world, we're going to have inequity between men and women. That's, one of the curses of Genesis 3. But that comes after the fall, after Eve first fell, ate the fruit, and then tempted Adam to partake in it. But here, yeah, they make it look like almost the first sin was Adam here, and then poor Lilith now goes to be consoled by Satan, or Lucifer, sorry. Go ahead, continue.
Drawn in by her fierce independence, Lucifer found her, and the two rebellious dreamers fell deeply in love.
Oh,
Father,
it's almost an oxymoron. Rebellious dreamers.
Yeah, that's just, and it's glorifying, obviously, it's glorifying rebellion. And that's the thing, like, which is so dangerous. Again, like, if you think like, oh, there's some truth to this, yeah, which is how a lie works, because Satan is a liar and the father of all lies. And you can't have a lie work without some element of truth to it. And so, they try to take, that yes, they were rebellious, but as if it's a good thing. Just like it says, cursed is he who calls evil good and good evil. But that's the way of Satan. He calls his evil of rebellion something good, which is what is so
Yeah.
dangerous. And, God talks about, rebellion as the sin of witchcraft. It's so dangerous. It's enchanting. It's because, witchcraft invites you in. It's something that's mesmerizing. And so rebellion, it's like, ooh, what is this? It's something different, something interesting. It's something I want to get wrapped up in. And, that's what makes this such a dangerous thing to expose children to. It's like, ooh, like maybe Lucifer actually there was something to this. It portrays it as something glorified. And again, that is so dangerous to a young mind.
And the tonality here in particular, you listen to the music and the way it's spoken and the energy that's going, the spirit that is behind this. It is clearly a spirit of deception here, not of truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's building sympathy for the rebels.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is a good rebellion. This is an honorable rebellion. And then it's interesting about this emphasis again of imagination. And we have to say there is imagination in Satan. We really got to give him credit to it. But it's then imagination that's used for lies, imagination that's used for destruction. It's never really used for good at all. Where God's imagination leads to creation of new worlds, to new life, to creatures. It's the complete opposite manifestation of imagination.
And, there's forms of imagination that lead to delusions, and there is imagination that leads to creation. And this is more the delusional type of imagination.
Yeah. That then seeks to bring others into the delusion.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and play it more.
they wish to share the magic of free will with humanity, offering the fruit of knowledge to Adam's new bride, Eve, who gladly accepted.
Pause it.
Can you pause?
Oh boy, this is where I got really upset when I saw that part.
Yeah, me too. Because I was like, Satan did not introduce free will. God gave free will since the beginning. That's why God gave the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's as if Satan offered this. Satan didn't offer free will in any way, shape, or form. Are you kidding me? If God didn't give free will, why would we have it in the first place?
And the whole point of having the tree of knowledge of good and evil there in the middle of the garden was to permit there to be free will. Because if there's absolutely no way for Adam and Eve to sin and go against God's commands, then yeah, there wouldn't be free will. But God put that tree in the midst to give them the ability to say, God, we want to rebel against you. We don't want to listen to you. We want to go against you. That's why it was there. And they flunked that test. And or exercise their free will in a way that was against God. And the irony of it is, as the Bible is clear, we will always have a master. And in choosing to go along with the serpent and choosing to believe the serpent who still lies to us today, they chose to say, okay, we actually want to join the rebellion. We want to be with Satan. We trust him more than we trust God.
Mhm.
And this is now how we've ended up in the mess we are. Why now most humans, most of us, or all of us actually start off with being burdened and in bondage of sin. And sin is a bondage. And Satan also keeps us in bondage through fear of death. And you might say, well, God is the one that causes death and all that. But it's really Satan who's leveraging death against us and using the fear of death to manipulate us, as it says in Hebrews. And it's Satan who's the accuser, who's telling God that we all deserve to die. And it's God who wants to liberate us from our lust, from our uncontrollable bodily urges. It's God who wants to free us from, or just, it's almost counterintuitive. God wants to give us self-control that we may then come into harmony with his law of liberty. And so if you're just doing whatever you want, anything you want, just indulging everything, the irony is you're no longer in control. You're now a slave.
Mhm.
And so Satan's trying to say, no, just do whatever you want. Please every urge you have.
But that's like such the, the mentality of somebody who's addicted,
Mhm.
the addicted person. It's like, I just need what I need. And it's like, but they don't realize that they're, they think, oh, I'm free because I'm, when they're doing these drugs or whatever, but, they're really not free. They're in total bondage. They're
Yeah.
chained to that, that controlling substance.
It creates a hunger that will never, ever be fed.
Yeah.
Whereas
Never
when we
felt.
follow God's ways,
That controlling substance.
yeah, you do get fed. You have a joy, which joy might never have the highs as high as, ecstasy, but it's constant, it's steady, it's there, and you don't drop down and have these horrible crashes and lows as well. So, most people live on this roller coaster that Satan takes us on, and most of it usually ends up down at the bottom.
It's a deepening void all the
Yeah,
time
a
instead
downward spiral.
instead of becoming an overflowing cup. It's a deepening sinking cup. It's a bottomless cup that can never be filled.
And so all of us actually still find ourselves today in the Garden of Eden at the tree of knowledge of good and evil, in a sense where then we must choose, are we going to believe the lies of the serpent who tells us God is a liar, we're not going to die, we're not going to have bad consequences violating God's law and violating God's commands, or are we going to listen to God and trust God and what he says, which is going the path of rebellion will lead to our death and destruction? That's our choice even to this day. Who are we going to listen to, God or the serpent? Who's here, we agree, is Lucifer. Lucifer was the one behind the what happened with Eve at the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yep.
So go ahead. Let's anything else before we move on?
Nope.
No, I think, yeah, we're
Go
good.
ahead, let's play it.
A curse, for with this single act of disobedience, evil finally found its way into Earth. With it, a new realm of darkness and sin, and the order heaven had worked to maintain was shattered. As punishment for their reckless act, heaven cast Lucifer and his love into the dark pit he had created, never allowing him to see the good that came from humanity.
Can we
Only
quickly,
cruel.
sorry. I can't help but stop it here to just say, like, how they cast Lucifer and his love as if he loved this woman. Satan does not love anyone. That is not his character.
Yeah.
And the thing is too, like when you look at, again, who he is from a biblical perspective, he only loves himself.
Mhm.
If you look at Isaiah chapter, again, 14 verses, 12 through 15, which I was reading earlier, he's going, I will ascend, me. That's his character. He doesn't love or care about anybody. He's a liar and a murderer from the beginning. He doesn't care about her. He doesn't care about anybody. And so that's what's so disturbing to me again is, like you're talking about him being this narcissist. I mean, can you imagine anybody more narcissistic than the devil? Everything is me. I will ascend. I want worship. He does not care about anything or anybody but his own self and his own worship and his own glorification. And so when you have, somebody like that, he has to then, like you're saying before, like he has to twist it as an, oh, I'm poor me. How dare you kick me out of heaven? Oh, I'm the victim. Like as if he, he didn't deserve it, as if he was wronged in some way, which is the biggest lie of all lies.
And he had no idea that tempting Eve was going to lead to all this sin and death and destruction that we now see in the world. Oh, he had no idea.
Yeah, and he had no idea that he was going to be cast out for this, and
which, by the way, he was already cast out when it happened.
And this idea that he loves her only in the way that it's like usury. It's like it's predatory. It's not.
Well, just the whole concept that a demon would have a relationship with a female. Like we actually talked about it last week, where there's no biblical evidence that demons have romantic relations or sexual relations at all with humans, or even with other angels or heavenly beings. Like that's not a biblical concept. All of them are portrayed as men. All of them more or less portrayed as being asexual. They don't marry.
And the thing is too, like when God created Adam and Eve, like you read about in Genesis chapter 1, it says, in the beginning, God created, man, male and female created he him, male and female created he them. He created them in the image of God. Male and female, Adam and Eve were created in God's image. And so God never speaks of that about the angels, which is what is different about humans and angels. Like, yeah, we're less than the angels in that we don't have those, magnificent powers that angels do. We can't fly, we can't do certain things, but we have the power to procreate. And that's what makes humans different than angels. That's why we're made in the image of God, is we have that creative ability in us that God alone has given to us. And what's sad, which is so sad, and I see it so clearly as far as, how Satan just perverted, this gift of, procreation into something, what it is today, in this wicked and perverse generation that we live in. And it's just so sad to see, how that's been perverted. But I could see how, Satan would be so jealous that he doesn't have that ability that Adam and Eve had, that they were given, to procreate and, populate the world basically through the means that God has, sanctified in the holy, union of marriage. And so you just see something so wicked. It doesn't show, Lucifer married to this girl. He's just kind of like, oh, we're dreamers. We're just kind of doing our thing. And it's like, oh, we're just trying to be free and have ideas. But, we've been punished wrongfully. But again, it's like the biggest, lie of just feeling, of, Satan trying to portray himself as, being this poor, innocent thing when he is that couldn't be further from the truth.
Delusions.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a cult. like that's almost what I feel like this video is, this movement is with, this almost like a Gnostic gospel portraying God as evil and Satan is really the good guy.
It is kind of Gnostic, and maybe that's why there wasn't a specific God, but just, beings of light. That is more Gnostic. And then I'm just thinking here too, like the brim hat, that strikes me more like they're trying to paint him as like a wizard or a sage. And in a lot of these occult traditions, there is great value on sages, these people with this divine originated knowledge that then passed it down. And Enoch was supposedly one of the great sages, and the Hiram, the guy who built the temple, was one of these. So it's I wonder if that's why they gave here Lucifer the hat they do, since he is almost like the Prometheus who gives fire to man, the God who gives the forbidden knowledge to human beings.
Definitely. Yeah. And almost like I've seen, those who practice voodoo, like the men who do that. It looks very similar to that kind of.
Yeah, it does look like that too.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue.
Yeah.
And the wicked, ashamed, Lucifer lost his will to dream. But Lilith thrived, empowering demonkind with her voice and her songs, and as the numbers of hell grew, so did its power. Threatened by this, heaven made a truly heartless decision.
Pause.
That every year,
Pause.
My goodness.
Oh my goodness. Like the voice and song, giving voice and song. It sounds like it's a beautiful thing, but this is not like there is song that is beautiful. That we see it in scripture all the time, but this is not what
What is what is interesting here too is it portrays not Lucifer as having that music, but Lilith, which is interesting because in the Bible, Ezekiel chapter 28, Lucifer is portrayed as being musical. It says, when he was, in Ezekiel chapter 28, starting verse 14, it says, "You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were in the holy mountain of God until iniquity was found in you." And excuse me. And it talks about that your pipes, like he had pipes built within him. He was a master of music. Lucifer had a great musical ability, not this Lilith that they're portraying, which is just interesting that they're just being obviously unbiblical in their description of how Lucifer operates. And then to call heaven heartless.
yeah.
Are you kidding me? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever believes in him would not perish, but have everlasting life, to save people from this sin, to save people from hell and darkness. Like, how is God in any way heartless? Like, that is that's
His
the
heart is breaking here.
Exactly. And that's Satan's character of being heartless, being portrayed to God.
Yeah. Projected onto God.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we'll talk about it at the end. But again, if you're God and if you're being falsely accused and basically Satan's projecting all his evil onto you, how would you prove to the universe that Satan is the liar, that he is the one who's causing trouble, and you really honestly do mean good for the whole universe? How would you do that if you're God? Think about it.
Mhm.
So let's keep going.
they would send down an army, an extermination, to ensure hell and its sinners could never rise against them.
Pause. So, of course, we know that there will be a day, right, when God will bring an end to the rebellion, and he will, those who choose to align themselves with Satan will be destroyed with Satan and his angels. But here it's making again, like, yeah, it's an act of evil as opposed to an act of necessity to bring peace and harmony back to the universe and put an end to death once and for all.
Exactly. And an act of mercy to those who are trying to live peacefully and lovingly, as opposed, in opposition to Satan, whose only goal is to kill and steal and destroy. And so, to bring harmony and a safe environment to those who are willing to, live peaceably.
And we're not the ones who observed it, but there's other people who have noticed Hollywood has this reoccurring theme of this big bad boss who shows up on planet Earth with like tons of minions that darken the skies, and this great apocalyptic scene that is always very reminiscent of the descriptions of when God is going to show up with his angels and will lay waste to the earth. So it's interesting, like Satan is grooming planet Earth to be scared when God comes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so sad because God doesn't want to destroy anybody. It says, in 2 Peter 3, God is not willing that any should perish. He's long suffering that, because he wants all to come to repentance. And that's what breaks my heart, is just seeing how they are portraying, God's character in such a way to, to distort it as if God is somehow this mean, evil person. But it says in I believe it's the book of Isaiah, he talks about the strange act, like God doesn't want to destroy. That's not his character to destroy. It's his character to create. And it's, again, out of, you're saying, only out of complete necessity that he would respect the choice of those who choose sin and death, that would be their consequence.
All right, let's keep going.
But Lilith's hope remained. and her dream was passed down to their precious daughter, the princess of hell. Don't worry, Mom. I'll make you proud.
All right, there we go. So if you're Jesus, if you're the Father, how are you going to prove to the universe that the problem is with Satan? And I think this is where the cross comes in and why the cross was so important. The cross wasn't some magical event that just happened so that God would appease himself. And that's the way it's often casted, that Jesus had to die on the cross so the Father would be willing to open his heart up again to us. And that is paganism. That's not the truth. The truth is God had to come down in the flesh, becoming human, come in weakness, show us what it means to truly love, to truly be the opposite of what the sociopath and the narcissist is, where you're just wholly emptying of yourself, where you're acting solely in the benefits of others. Jesus always, the whole time, was taking care of others, dealing with their interests, even to his detriment. And as they said, no greater love is this than to die, to lay down your life for your friends. And then that's what he did too. He took his words to the cross. He died, and it wasn't just died. He let Satan nail him to the cross. That was Satan doing it, leading that charge. And by doing that, by not fighting Satan with force and let Satan unilaterally be the one to use deadly force, God revealed the true heart of Satan, and that it was Satan who is the one who leads to death, who leads to pain, who is the liar, who is the one who just brings pain and suffering everywhere. And Christ, by taking it, by always helping others in every single moment of his life, showed the true character of God.
Yeah, and just the ending there really to me, because hope is one of the most important things we can have spiritually. And that distortion of hope, that delusional use of the word hope, a wicked use of the word hope. Hope is good, but that was a very perverted form of hope.
Definitely. And that's what I mean. Obviously, Satan, everything he does is, a counterfeit. It's a twist, a perversion. It's always something. He takes something God has made because he can't create. And so he takes something God has made and basically makes it terrible and deadly and disgusting, or, something in that manner. And yeah, exactly. And I'm like, she's like, I'm not going to let you down. And it's like, to do what? To make more people lost, to lead more people to hell, to lead more people to destruction, like to just keep going with the rebellion and lead more people to rebel as if that's a good thing, so
That's
that they
what
can
Satan
be
does,
lost
though.
and not experience, God's love and salvation. So,
And I think what you just said there, right there, just completely nailed it. It is that, Satan's goal is to lead the rebellion and to keep people from God, to take and distort all of God's truths into something that is not true, to separate people from the love of God. That is his whole purpose. If he can't have their love, he just doesn't want God to have it. That's that's the whole purpose. So he's distorting everything good about God, so that people don't actually want to get to know God.
And the thing is, it's what's so funny about true about what you just said is that, that's basically, again, we're going back to the Garden of Eden. It's Satan coming to Eve. When you read Genesis 3, I mean, it's so interesting, the fall, because it always baffled me. I'm like, why would Eve do that? And then why did Adam eat it? Satan knew what he was doing. He was being very sneaky, and he used the love that they had for each other against each other. Satan is so manipulative, and that's, again, a huge attribute of a narcissist and of a sociopath, is they pin people against each other who are trying to be on the same side. And when you look at Genesis chapter 3 and what the serpent says to the woman, in verse, starting verse 2, it says, the woman said to the serpent, we may eat, or sorry, let's go back to Genesis 3:1. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast. And he says to the woman, has God indeed said, like, did he really say you should not eat of every tree of the garden? So he's asking a question to invoke doubt on God's word. And then she goes, we can eat of it, but the fruit of the tree, which is in the midst of the garden, he says you should not eat of it or else you'll die. She says also, she adds touch it, which, she was kind of adding a precautionary thing, which was not a bad idea, but, she's probably being overly cautious for good reason, lest you'll die. And then he says, you will not surely die. So he's calling God a liar. And, he says, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. So again, he presents, something good coming out of this rebellion, something good coming out of disobedience. And the woman, she starts to think, it's not that she's thinking, as much as, I want to know more, but also he hit in her heart the doubt of God's love towards her. And when you start to doubt that God really loves you, that's when you will fall every time, because why would you serve a God that doesn't love you? That doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
But, and so Satan knew exactly what she needed. He knows that women, are a big part of what we need in life. We need to be loved. We need that love in our hearts. That's, crucial to our mental, physical, spiritual, everything, well-being. And, so he attacks that. And in so doing, that's where she's just like, okay, I will give in to any, she's looking for love now in all the wrong places. And she, partakes of that fruit. And then she goes to Adam, who, sees that she did it. And he's just like, you know what? He loved Eve so much. He did not want her to die and him to live on. His love for Eve was what, motivated him to partake of that fruit. And so you see, again, Satan knew exactly what he was doing. He was manipulative. He was, selfish, and he's just a big liar. And so again, like, you can't, I'm sorry, I have no, I can't sympathize with Satan, because I know his intention was only to hurt and only to hurt God's people, because he's angry at God and he knows that he can't hurt God. So he'll hurt God's people whom God loves in order to hurt him.
And I think the biggest danger of this film, and it's not unique, there's so many other videos. This is a reoccurring theme in many Luciferian videos, is it's all about building the sympathy for Satan. And for demons, and they're the poor oppressed ones, and we need to join in the rebellion.
And the truth is, if you want a better life, if you want to actually be full, have peace, have fulfillment, have true satisfaction in life, like joy, all of that, you're not going to find that in that rebellious approach. It's just not there. You're only going to find that when you realize that that's a dangerous route to go down and decide to go to God instead.
Yeah. God's ways of love and selfless giving to others is the only way that all of us can peacefully coexist and find true happiness and have life abound. It's the only way. And that's why God requires it, because that is the only way we can all be happy, all have free will, and coexist for eternity.
Exactly. And it's so beautiful that, when God says, somebody asked Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus, says there's actually two. One is to love your God with all your heart, and, and the same is, just as important, to love your neighbor as yourself. And so God's law is based on love and unselfishness, and not on this rebellion of, I'm free to do whatever I want. And basically, I don't care what that means, which means you're going to end up hurting other people in the process. And so how is that something worth, getting into, fighting for, and being any part of? I don't want that. I want to be a loving person who loves other people. And I want to be somebody who's safe to be around, that I'm going to control myself and not do whatever I feel like, because I have love and respect for other people and their needs and their safety. So
amen.